You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston and Chris Trent, episode number 76.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, your hosts, Jody Livingston and Chris Trent.
Time grabs you by the wrist, the direction where to go. Okay, go ahead.
My favorite is when you immediately turn a podcast into a musical. It's the best. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Wherever you are and wherever this finds you, thanks for making this episode today a part of your day. If it's your first time checking out the show, welcome. We are glad you are here. And if you are a returning listener, part of the Longer Haul community, perhaps even a member of the Super Secret Podcast Facebook group, we're glad you are here. If you enjoy the podcast, we'd love for you to share it with somebody who you think may benefit from it as well. Be sure to subscribe to the show so that you get all the goodness every time it comes out each and every week. And yeah, we're back. 76.
Yeah, man. So, hey, this is that's Jody there. I'm Chris, and we're a couple youth pastors in the Atlanta area, and we don't work at the same church or anything, but we're friends and been doing this podcast. We've actually had a couple weeks off. We missed a couple episodes. I don't know if you're backdating this one to pretend like we didn't, but truth be known, we missed a couple episodes. Life happens, you know. That's the hard part about doing podcasting whenever you have a real job. Yeah.
Wait, you're saying that if you're in youth ministry, that it counts as a real job?
Yeah, I am.
Almost as if you're like a real pastor.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we love youth pastors and love talking about youth ministry. It's what we do. So, yeah, man.
Indeed. You can find us over on social media, wherever, at Chris Trent, Jody Livingston. That's Jody with a Y, Chris with a C. I don't know. All the links and resources that we mentioned will be on the show notes page at thelongerhaul.com/episode 076. thelongerhaul.com/episode 076. So, important topic today.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Like, both you and I have experienced what we're talking about and
Sure.
had to kind of go through it for sure. But yeah, talking about when to leave, like when, and I don't know, maybe somebody's listening today that's struggling with that question of how long do I stay in my current position? We're all about longevity, but truth is there are moments where you have to decide to leave. So we'll talk about that. We'll dig in for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So what's going on in your life, man? Well, I know a lot of what's going on in your life. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But personally, you got anything cool happening?
Man, we're just trying to.
Coming to my church tomorrow night to speak. What?
I am.
Frenzy.
It's either a really good idea or a really crazy one. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But it'll be fun. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to come and see, hang out a bit.
Man.
So that'll be fun. We're good. Yeah, man. We're right in the middle of the semester, so just juggling parent-teacher conferences now, and all that stuff, exams, and as a family, running crazy. So that's fun. How about you?
We've got a huge event coming up D now, so we're in the middle of that and just busy being a youth pastor. Did go to the Magic Convention since we talked last. I'll spare you all the details, but I've got about 30 minutes worth of details to tell you about. I'm kidding.
Hey, you may or may not have promised a magic trick to the Facebook
It's
group.
coming. Well, yeah. No, that's going to happen. Like, that's actually going to happen. I'm in the process of figuring something out there for that. But had a great time. Got to hang out with a couple good friends that also are Christian illusionist guys. A couple buddies, I'll name drop. Jared Hall and Shane Wilbanks were both there, and both those guys tour and do their thing. And awesome guys, but good friends as well. And we just nerded out on youth ministry really, and magic. It was terribly nerdy, but we had a great time. So
it sounds amazing. Sounds familiar.
You're lying, but it's all right. We had a good time. So yeah,
that's cool. Well, hey, before we jump into the topic in the show today, we do want to thank our sponsor. We love these guys, man.
Yes.
We love these guys. So YM360 partnering here with us as a sponsor on the show. Listen, if you need anything really, Bible study, curriculum, student devotionals, Disciple Now stuff, resources. Maybe you need
a book on longevity and youth ministry.
Yeah, they've got a really good one there written by a guy named Chris Trent. Student devotionals, leadership development stuff, summer camp. You do summer camp with them.
I do.
Man, these guys are fantastic. We appreciate them. And not only do they put out great resources, they genuinely love student ministry, student pastors, teenagers, and most of all, Jesus. And man, we can't speak enough to their character and to what they do. And so we're incredibly grateful for them. So if you need any of that stuff, head over to ym360.com. Make sure you use the promo code LONGERHAUL. You can save 20% off your next order, and maybe camp if you try it. I don't know.
It's not going to work on camp. Stop saying it.
Yeah. So, are you ready? We got anything else? I think we've covered.
Yeah, no, man. Let's jump into this thing. It's a lot to talk about. So let's dig in.
Cool. All right, here we go.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Boom. No, man. So this is a topic we've kind of talked about this in the past. In fact, if you go to thelongerhaul.com, on the right-hand side in the sidebar, you can actually download a little PDF document there that has reasons to leave. And so we're going to talk about some of those today. Obviously, we promote longevity. We believe very much in being in youth ministry, staying in youth ministry for the longer haul, but even more than that, staying put where you are for the longer haul, and then the greater influence comes through that. But as you said, even there in the opening, there are times when we need to step away and step and leave, and you and I've both done that. And so,
I've done it one time, Jody. One time.
Well, you win. You also wrote the book, so that's why.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but I'm going to tell you straight up that it was a hard decision, and it wasn't easy to, going through that. So I had been at, North Lake was my church in Garland, Texas. I'd been there for almost 8 years. And believe me, whenever I started feeling like, oh man, it might be time, like my time might be here, coming to an end here. It was kind of hard to understand that. And because I hadn't done it before really, as a full-time guy. And it became a real challenge trying to figure out in all of the emotions. What about my kids? What about the people who I built relationships? And at the time, my son and daughter had been born. So my personal kids and my students is what I meant a minute ago when I said kids. All of the emotion. What about all the relationships we have? Man, these kids need me. We have a great thing going here. All those things made it really hard to understand and navigate. And for the most part, things were great. I had a great relationship with a youth pastor or with my pastor. Great relationship with the church. It wasn't anything huge, but man, it was a real deal. I may jump back into that a couple times throughout the talk as we're going through some of these things we've got because they do relate. But yeah, man, that was hard. And you've done it a couple times at least. And it's leading up to kind of why we're talking about this. You may want to jump into that.
Yeah, sure. Hey, let me ask you this before we do that. Have there been moments where you have wrestled through, hey, is God calling me someplace else? Is it time to step out? And you kind of walk through a bit of a process and realize, nope, this is where we're supposed to be. We're still here. You ever had that?
Yeah. So,
and I'm not asking to disclose a bunch of details or
no. I don't.
Last week, you don't have to say that.
Yeah, last week. I'm in the process right now. No, I'm not actually. I've aged out. Nobody's calling me anymore. No. At Johnson Ferry, where I'm serving now, I've not come close to leaving, and I've really not had anything more than maybe get a call. I'll pray about that a couple days. But most of the time it doesn't even get that far, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I feel so sure about where I am. And it's not that I'm not willing. It's just like that. I feel like God sends moments before that kind of help you know. So it's not just come right out of the blue and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
At North Lake, I mean, I had a couple moments, where before I ended up actually pulling the trigger. Crazy enough, I actually had a deal because I left North Lake, came here to Johnson Ferry. And what was interesting was I actually had interviewed here at Johnson Ferry for a little while, and the process stalled here. And so everything inside of us was like, okay, well, God just put us through that to affirm that we are where we're supposed to be. And we're about to dig in, and we're going to stay here for a lot longer. And we're okay with that. We're happy to do it, because we love our church, love everything. It was actually a moment of like real affirmation, but it was also a moment where, but God, if you're leading us to go to Georgia, we will. From Texas, but then a couple weeks later, everything kind of blew back up. It was like and a lot more details to that, but so yeah, I mean, but not a lot of that.
Yeah.
Just that one example.
Yeah. I don't know that there's been many, but there have been some, like you're saying, somebody calls or a friend maybe reaches out. And
no, let me tell you this, I could have, right?
Oh, sure.
No, I want to be so, but part of it is, Jody, probably a little bit of philosophical there of just saying, yeah, I'm not really every single person that calls, I'm not necessarily going to go through a process with you, It's not because I don't think you're worthy or whatever. It's just that I feel really confident. Like if a church even were to call this afternoon, I would have to be real honest and say, I mean, I'll take a moment and pray about that. But honestly, I've got nothing indicating, there's been nothing to indicate that I should be looking to go somewhere else right now. Like there's nothing happening in my life right now. And in my ministry that would cause me to think, oh, hey, maybe it's time that I start considering going somewhere else. And so as a result of that, I typically don't go through much of a process. Now, I think there are some guys who every call they get, they're willing to talk to them. Yeah. Sure. I don't know if I like that. That's just me.
Yeah. I'm not cut that way. I'm like you, man. I think most of the time I generally start from a posture of no. I don't know if that's right or not. That's just kind of how I've been wired. And I tend to be really loyal pretty naturally, I think, too. So that probably plays into that quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think there are moments regardless where you kind of have to wrestle through and sometimes you're going to find yourself. I think maybe where this comes most often though, is when you're in a spot where, like to quote the great theologian Nacho Libre, you would say, it sucks to be me right now, and,
sure.
And so
no doubt.
That's when you start going, okay, there's got to be something better or easier.
Yeah. And I think that's why what we're going to do, so we've got a list here. We want to hear a little bit of your story, something you're going through right now, but we've got a list though that we're going to come back to where we're going to say, well, here are some reasons we think that it's okay to leave. We're also going to tag it though in the end with a quick list of reasons not to leave. Because we think there are some reasons that some people probably go, oh yeah, you know what, maybe this is God saying I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So stick around.
That's good.
For reasons not to leave.
For reasons not to leave. That's at the very end.
Speaking of leaving, will you just go ahead and tell your story already?
Sure. So some are going to know.
You quitter? I'm just kidding.
So I recently stepped away from the position I was at here. And, a lot of the reasons here that we're going to go through, so, they fall in there. I will say this, first of all, I know I have youth leaders from there who listen. So, hey guys, love those guys, love that church still very much. Love that church, those families, those students, love a great team of youth workers there. And, we were there almost 9 years. So my oldest right now is 15. She's about to turn 16. And she was in first grade when we went. So our younger kids, they don't even really remember life before that. And what's cool?
Born there, right? Did you have one born there?
No, he was one when we came. So he was, I mean, pretty much, but not really. But what's cool about that is, and this is kind of even to the point of what we say with longevity in regards to, I can look back and kind of stepping out has really given me an amazing perspective of and time of evaluating what we've done and what we were able to accomplish and build there, and the students, the quality, the character, and the faithfulness of those students. And man, I can step out and say I have no regrets in that regard. And man, the Lord was so faithful, and man, we were producing some amazing students out of that ministry, and that'll continue. And we got to see several classes come all the way through the student ministry and kind of walk them through that process, and it's been good. And my kids have benefited from that as well, and lifelong friendships for sure, both for my wife and I, and for our kids. And but like I said, I do think I'm kind of loyal by nature, and while I would like to think that everywhere we go is where we will stay, that's not always the case, and it wasn't here. If you'd asked me a year ago if we'd had this conversation a year ago, I would have said never leaving. I'll be here forever. But I think back maybe about January or so, kind of started just the Lord just kind of started shaking me loose a bit, and I was holding on tight, and that just kind of continued to accelerate, and and then it ultimately led to us kind of needing to step out, and we didn't do anything. There's no moral, ethical things there in place of that. We just stepping out, and in our case right now, currently, at the time of this recording, we didn't necessarily step out to go into another ministry yet either. So still pursuing that and trying to figure out what that looks like for us. Our desire is still definitely student ministry, still very passionate about students and student ministry. And so now we're in a whole new phase of kind of spying out the land and interviewing and talking to folks. And we've just kind of put our yes on the table. And
which is a whole nother podcast.
Man.
Because I've been walking through this process with you, and it has been quite the experience.
Dude, we are seriously going to have to do that, because I've learned a ton in the process that I think it will actually be very helpful, and that I didn't know otherwise. And I've seen a bunch of things that I think people don't do well.
God's taking you through this for a reason. And by the way, you're cougar because you said you're holding on too tight, and that's from the first part of Top Gun.
Yeah, they're making a second one. I'm so excited.
I'm holding on too tight.
Yeah, that's me.
I've turned in my wings.
I got to turn in my wings. So that's what I did. Turn in my wings.
That means there's some young whippersnapper out there that's going to take over the reins of your church.
Probably.
Top Gun. Yeah. Okay.
I hope he listens to the podcast so he doesn't. No, yeah. So I think all that to say, like, there are moments and times where we step away, and
well, and you handle this thing with integrity, and I know your heart through this whole process, because we have spent lots of time talking about it, and I know it's been a process, but it is clear that God started to shift your heart and made it clear that your time there was coming to an end.
Yeah.
And so you've been going through that process for a little while now, and it really.
And I don't want to give the impression that like I'm being shady and I'm not being forthcoming on that. I'm not at all. We just love those folks, and
it takes time. And honestly, and the thing with even when I left North Lake, and I happened to be going to a different gig, obviously, but that said, even at the time, it wasn't like it was easy, because if you are loyal, you start to feel like you're being when you start talking to other churches, and, it's like, what? And so anyway, but that kind of leaves us where we're at right now, which is, you are in process, and a couple great opportunities out there potentially. And I have no doubt God's going to, and I know you deep down know that as well, that God's going to, that you're going to land. And you still clearly feel called to youth ministry. And it's not like all of a sudden, just because you're not serving at a church, you don't know what you're talking about or something. I mean, the years that you've put in, and so our plan as far as the longer haul goes is to, other than changing the name to almost longer haul,
we're sometimes the longer haul.
Chris is the longer haul. Jody kind of the longer haul.
We'll have to put your name first and everything now.
Yeah. I've earned that now. But no, we're just going to keep plugging away because we feel like the people that we're interviewing, all that, nothing's going to change when it comes to all that. We're going to keep doing this thing. Got some great things coming that we've been talking about as well. So, look forward to that. So all that said, if we were going to give advice, because we do get phone calls like this as a 48-year-old still doing this thing from time to time, I have these conversations with guys and gals going, hey, how do I know when to leave? So let's jump in to the list there. Why don't you lean on the why to leave a whole lot, and I'll kind of back, I'll take over kind of lead when it comes to the reasons not to.
Yeah, so I'll say this, and I think we both kind of said this even just a minute ago. Generally, I'm going to start from a posture of stay, and until you can't or it becomes obvious that you should leave, and there are moments of that. And so I'm going to go through a list here, and all in full transparency that if this is something you're struggling with and you want this list, you can head to thelongerhaul.com. It's on the right hand side there in the margin. I'll put a link for this also in the show notes. But so this is a list that I put together in 2015, so there's 7 reasons here.
That's back when you were a youth pastor.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see how many jokes I can get in the next 30 minutes.
So the first one is this: you should leave when you're asked to, and man, that you would think that seems fairly obvious, but it's not always. And I think, man, there's a tendency there to feel like when you've been asked to leave, that you should stand your ground, that you should fight, and stay, that there's been some injustice done, that you want people to know what. And every circumstance is different, obviously. The reason that you're asked to leave could be a variety of things. The emotions that you talked about, Chris, just a minute ago, of feeling like, oh man, you've poured into these leaders and parents and students, and that the pain you feel there, especially in that situation, man, is real. We talk about ministry a lot. It's so much more than a job. I mean, it becomes who you are. Your house is full of teenagers, and you're walking through some really heavy things, and all of a sudden now to kind of be asked to step aside from that, that's not like just being asked to leave a job. That's something you can take really personal. And so the tendency, though, I think so often is to stand and fight and defend yourself. And, look, man, it's pretty impossible to defend yourself without damaging the ministry and the church that you've just left, in my opinion. I mean, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that's a tough issue, because it just depends. Every circumstance is different, and I know you know that. And
sure.
So it's hard to say that as a blanket. Here's what I would say. Let me say it this way. I would amend when you're asked to leave, and I would add to it when you're asked to leave or the writing is on the wall.
Yeah, sure.
Is what I would say. That things have clearly gotten to a point where it's either going to end honorably and clean, or it's going to end ugly. But it's going to end. It's going to end, because some churches are terrible about knowing how to ask you to leave.
Yeah, sure they are.
In their mind, they're done, and they're digging, and they're trying to send you the message, And sometimes I think it's just one of those where, man, when the writing's on the wall, when the conflict gets too great, and it's impacting your family, or that you're going to likely be fired eventually, kind of thing. Yeah, I think it just I think that's where you just have to read the writing on the wall, and then when you're asked to leave, you need to leave. But I will say that I have some friends that have been in unfortunate circumstances where they were asked, and I'm not speaking in code here, this is not you, where they've been asked to leave, and it wasn't, this happened back, honestly, when I was in college, asked to leave, and it was totally inappropriate. It was totally not fair. And the pastor wasn't handling it well. And it was a raw deal for everybody. But even in that moment, this guy could have stood and fought, but he chose to just do that, humbly and accept that, even with some people wanting to stand behind him. I just don't know that ever ends well. And
no, it doesn't.
And
well, and I think you have to be careful.
I'm sure there's some example out there where it did. So I'm not saying, you know what I'm saying?
Don't email us.
Mostly, though, I just think that it's time to, I just feel like Jesus is mostly like that too. I'm sure there's examples, but I feel like absolutely. Mostly, though, Jesus, that turn the other cheek, that humility, that dust the sandals off your feet, or dust the what is that? Dust your what is that saying? Don't leave me hanging.
Shake the dust off your feet.
Shake the dust off your feet, or whatever it is. When he's talking to the disciples, and then even falsely being accused and going to the cross. I know that's an extreme example, but I mean, honestly, I just think that's more Jesus-like. I just do.
Yeah. Well, I think the key is
not saying it's easy.
No. I think you just have to be mindful to leave graciously and gracefully, whatever that looks like, and be mindful that what you say and do in those situations, not only can you fail to really defend yourself fully, but you can absolutely destroy what you've spent however many years building. And so you just have to be mindful of that. There's a great article on our website, actually, on the blog from obviously before 2015 from a friend of the show, Matthew Hart, called "When You Want to Stay and Can't." And, he kind of walks through his experience with that. It's really helpful of what he experienced in being asked to leave. And so if that's where you are and you find yourself, man, I would highly recommend checking out that. And it's something to all of these really. You just walk through these really prayerfully, all these.
Yeah. What about number 2? What you got? What's the next one?
All right. Number 2 is when your health is suffering. We know how stressful ministry can be at times. And I think, I've had moments where, man, I found myself extremely stressed due to ministry. And it led to, I was having a bunch of heart palpitations. I wasn't sleeping well, and just, it wasn't good. And so if you find yourself where your health really, where the ministry is affecting your health, that's probably a good warning sign that you need to evaluate where you are. And maybe that doesn't mean like leaving and stepping away altogether. Maybe it just means kind of stepping away for a time or taking some extended time away if you're able to do that. I know that's not necessarily possible in every situation, but I think that's something to consider. Wayne Cordero, who's a pastor in Hawaii, a great book called Leading on Empty, where he talks about that particularly. And Aaron Hellman actually came on the show. I don't know what episode that was, long time ago, talking a little bit about burnout and health and managing and balancing time and those types of things. But I think oftentimes we disregard our own health because we feel that the cause or the purpose or the work that we're doing is really, really important. And it is important, but you have to be able, we want to be able to serve out of our best, and that means being our healthiest as well. And so, yeah.
Agreed.
Health.
Agreed.
Number 3, when your spiritual walk is a wasteland. This is hard. I think this is really hard because oftentimes in ministry, and this isn't just youth ministry, this is just in general, it's really easy to allow your study time and your counseling others and your pouring into others to kind of bleed in and replace your own personal walk. And you can do that for a while, I think, but there comes a point then where you kind of run out of that. And I've said a lot, like you can do youth ministry for about 2.5 years without Jesus. And then after that, then you're going to be in trouble. And so, we've got to be able, I mean, if you think you can do games without Jesus, right? You can plan activities and retreats and camps. You can do that. You can do, whatever, lock-ins. You can go to ball games. You can do, I don't know if you can do middle school band concerts without Jesus, but, you should do all those things, and you can do that. But, and if you were doing those things, in most cases, people would look at you and say, you're being you're being really effective. And you're really pouring into students, but that doesn't necessarily always reflect your personal walk. And sometimes you can get really comfortable in that routine, kind of a rhythm of doing ministry. And then before you know it, you look around and your own walk is just totally destroyed and you're just fake.
Yeah. And I don't think you're saying as soon as you realize your walk's not where it needs to be, time to leave youth ministry or time to quit your church.
Oh, no.
We're talking about,
and you talk about this in your book too, the importance of this.
Yeah.
And you've talked about it a bunch, like the importance of your spiritual walk. And I don't think if you're listening, you go, man, my walk's fake right now, I should quit. No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think if it gets to a point, then it's something to consider. And if anything, it's worth stepping aside and taking some time to pour in.
And I would also say this too. I don't think this is like a test that we're giving out here and you're going,
check. That's like a spiritual gifts inventory.
No. I think this would be in combination with other things too. Like there would be other things being impacted along with your spiritual walk, as well. But it's worth considering for sure, no doubt.
Number 4.
Yep.
When you fall morally. Now, this is something we just talked about with Walt Mueller on the podcast. So if
go back and listen to Walt Mueller's podcast, it's so good. If you've not listened, push pause.
Yeah.
Go back.
Yeah. Stop here. Go back and then come back again.
No.
It was that episode was so good. And so Walt Mueller. For Center and Parent Youth Understanding came on episode, I think it was 72, if I remember right.
I'm pulling it up.
But he came on. We talked a lot about this. And
72.
I think.
Yep.
Oh, look at that. Yes. Score. I mean, if you look around the landscape right now of church leadership, this is disastrous. This is epidemic, and so you got to guard yourself before it gets to this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the scary part. But if you're listening and you're treading lines you shouldn't be, or you've crossed some of those lines, you definitely need to listen to episode 72. And beyond that, you need to make sure that you're seeking out some help, repentance, and that, depending on what that is and what that looks like, definitely will require you to step away at some point. So it's damaging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say a whole lot about that one because we talked about it in 72, but
no doubt.
I think that's definitely a reason. Number 5, when your family is at risk. When your family's at risk. And this is a heartbreaker. You and I were actually just talking about this. One of the groups that we were in, that with the Facebook group things, somebody had posted just like almost a cry for help. Like, hey, it's a youth pastor group here, and like, man, my marriage is in trouble, and I think we're headed towards divorce, and I don't know what to do. And I'd love just to have somebody to sit down with, right? And man, gosh, my heart just breaks. And like, truth be told, and to be honest, like, man, I've been there. I've been there. Sarah and I, we have a great marriage right now. I mean, our marriage is as strong as it's ever been, but it hasn't always been that way. We've had ebbs and flows, and there were some scary moments for us. And we were committed to this thing, and we went and we got some marriage counseling and help, and saw God do some amazing restoration in that. And it was a lot of what you typically think of in marriage. I think we were living with this myth of balance, that we just need to balance family and ministry. And both of us kind of had these different expectations on the opposite sides of that. And, the reality is balance isn't really a thing in ministry. It's health that we came out of that really realizing we need to pursue health and not balance. And you when you and Wendy were on, you 25 things, right? 25 lessons from 25 years of ministry. I mean, you talked a lot about your journey in that, and Sarah and I have both been on the show, and talked about balancing family and youth ministry. And so, if you're married and or just getting married, or about to be married, or hope one day to be married, or I'll put links to both of those episodes in the show notes as well, and highly recommend you to go and check those out. But I feel like if you're trying to pursue balance, somebody's always losing in that. And, you can't give both. You just can't do both well all the time. And I mean, that's not the way I want to say that, but sometimes
it's hard the way you're saying it, because balance is a good, I don't think you're saying balance is not a good thing, because it depends on what on what you mean by balance. Right.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is there are times in ministry where there is no balance. There are times, let me tell you, the week leading up to D Now, there is no balance. I'm a youth pastor, and my parents or my family and my wife and my kids just kind of stay out of my way that week. Honestly, they just give me that gift. The key though is, and this is where there is balance. The key is though, when I'm not doing that I'm present.
Yeah.
When I can, not when I can. And so it's also an understanding that when it comes to longevity, if you hope to experience longevity, you are going to have a healthy family situation, and you're going to have to work at that. And that means when you're able to do family, you've got to do family. And when you can't do family, your family has to also, they're in it with you. And I've heard stories of guys in particular saying things like, "Oh yeah, well, I have to protect my family life, so I can't go up to the church for that meeting that the deacons called tonight. I'm going to tell them no." And I'm like, "Have you lost your mind? You're like, you have a job, and that's your, you work for the church, and they've got a meeting. You're supposed to go to that, I don't mean that it means you're at every single chili supper and every single little thing necessarily, but I'm just saying that ministry is hard work. Balance doesn't. It's all, it depends on what you mean by balance, honestly. But ultimately, if you don't take good care of your family, it's going to lead to you ultimately having to. Well, everybody in your family is going to have animosity towards the church. And ultimately it's going to lead. And if it's gotten to the point though, here's the deal though, if it gets to the point where your marriage is at risk, or your kids, your relationship with your kids is risk, I don't feel like we should sacrifice our families for ministry.
No, you can't, because if you lose that, then you lose the ministry, right?
So
and vice versa.
The key is that you understand how important it is to work on that. And try to stay on top of that best you can, and fight for that. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, well, there's seasons. There's seasons where your ministry is going to need more of you, and there's seasons where your family's going to need more of you, and you've got to be willing to do both.
Yep. Well, like number 6, right. When God genuinely calls you, is what you wrote. I like that one. I think that's a good one, Jody. And I experienced that. Doors started consistently closing for me. I felt like I was spinning my wheels, not just one time. I always had. Right. I'm spinning wheels today, but but I'm talking about
I've ridden with you.
But there just starts to be this moment of man, God's calling me. God's genuinely calling me. Is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah, I think you start feeling like, you start feeling God call you, to something else or away from something. And, I think generally God calls you to something, and sometimes that doesn't mean another position. Sometimes that means more to himself, but this isn't running. I think that's the thing is I I mean, how many times have you had a conversation with somebody who said, I feel like God's calling me to something else, and you're like, well, tell me about the situation, and I'm not going to speak for the Lord or against it, but it just seems like this one. I think the danger with this one is this is the one we always use when we leave.
Oh yeah, sure.
But I'm not sure. But I'm not sure that it's always the reason we leave.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And so, but that doesn't discredit it as an actual reason to leave either. It just, generally when I talk to somebody who says this, they've been where they are about 2 to 3 years, and now all of a sudden God's calling them away, and then it happened about 2 to 3 years before that, and about 2 to 3 years before, And when we had Richard Ross on. One of the things that I've heard him say before is you see guys that say they have 10 years of youth ministry experience, but it's really just 2.5 over and over and over and over again. And I think in those cases, a lot of times, this is the reason that everybody gives. But all that to say, there are times where God genuinely does do that. And it's scary. It's always scary.
Episode 58, Richard Ross, good night. So good.
50.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Yeah, I had to talk about wisdom. That's the one I just sat quiet and let you and listen. It's so good. But I think the difficult part is discerning that, and even when you're leaving, like in this for this, it's still going to be painful.
Yeah,
right. It's still going to be difficult.
I just think that this is what I think, and I am fully guilty. Close your door. Did you hear the buzz? I'm in my living room.
So I think, be mindful that God can certainly and does certainly call you away. And there are times when he does that, but I wouldn't be so quick to credit everything that you're doing to him. I think we give him a lot of blame and a lot of credit for things that maybe it's just our preference sometimes. So, makes sense? Yeah. You agree?
Yeah, totally.
All right, number 7, this is the last one I have, is when you're not actually called to youth ministry after all.
Bum, bum, bum.
This is a hard one, man. I think most of us love youth ministry most days that are in it. You ever youth pastor? But I think a lot of guys and girls, a lot of folks come in to youth ministry. They feel called to youth ministry because they saw God do a lot in their life as a teenager. And as a result of that, they want to do that. And that's my story. I know that we've talked about that for you even.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that work out really well for people and really bad for people.
Right. Right.
For me, it worked out really well. I think God used all of that experience. I've seen other people that have come in thinking that it's mostly fun and games. And they go, oh, wait, what? Oh, interesting. There's work involved, and so it's,
Well, it's different on the inside, and even as a volunteer youth worker, we love volunteer youth workers, but it's a different type of burden. And
part of that might be, are you comfortable with adding the words that you're not called, or that you're no longer called?
Sure.
I mean, because God's calling, and I tell you, my heart has changed about, and I did write a book on it, but I mean, my heart really has changed on that, and it had already changed by the time I wrote the book. But I don't assume that everybody is called lifelong to youth, and this is going to be real. I don't know if this is controversial, really, but I don't even believe that about working in the church per se. I think it's wild to think that somehow that God owes it to us when we're 25 years old to say, okay, here's your calling for life, period. Bam. You're good to go.
Sure.
And then God can never change that course. There may just be a moment where God says, hey man, not any longer. I want you to do something else.
Yeah. Not this phase. Right. And I think part of this is such a response to what we saw, like, for so long, and it's still, we had this conversation. We did this kind of reception thing for us, like as we were leaving, kind of our last Sunday, and lot of folks came through the church. Love them. Loving people who mean well, have been incredibly encouraging and prayerful for our family. Like, I'm incredibly grateful for them. But, because we don't know what we're stepping into yet next, their comments repeatedly hearing from a lot of the adults, like, oh, we can't wait to see what God does in your ministry one day. And maybe now you'll be a real pastor. And, those types of, and they don't mean it that way, but how many times have you heard it, I think there was this idea that, and for so long, youth ministry was seen as a legitimate stepping stone into kind of a senior pastor role. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's so many people now that see youth ministry as a legitimate, I'll call career, even though that's probably a little more secular than what I'm intending. I don't think that's the issue anymore. However, I do think that youth pastors make great senior pastors.
Agreed. And you and I both feel this way. And this is a little bit of a beef we have with some people. I think people take this overboard when they're talking about, don't use youth ministry as a stepping stone. I just feel like, who are we to establish what the plan and course of somebody's life is when it comes to their calling? Yeah. And if God wants to take a guy through youth ministry or children's ministry or whatever, in order for him to become a youth pastor or a real I fell into the trap, a pastor, whatever you want to call it, a senior adult or senior pastor. You know what I mean? Of course,
like a lead pastor role.
And it's not even that. Like, listen, our current, we have an executive staff at where I work, and our current education pastor, who oversees a whole bunch of folks, he just left youth ministry about 2 years ago to come do this. So he was a youth pastor. Now I make fun of him ruthlessly to his face, even though he's my supervisor, about the good old days when he was a youth pastor and he got to have fun. But that said, and it's a big joke with us, but that said, he is a phenomenal education pastor. How did he become that? Because he spent all those years doing youth ministry. And there's no question in my mind that guy clearly called him out of youth ministry to do what he's doing now, because he's excellent at it. Yeah. I just don't think it's fair to him to say, oh, you shouldn't have used, so I think that's part of the whole calling thing, but we're on a little bit of a soapbox here. So anyway,
that's okay. No, but we're in agreement. There's a great book I'd recommend on this called Is God Calling Me by Jeff York. Now this, and it's York, IORG, Jeff York. This is a book more about vocational calling. It doesn't really address youth ministry specifically, more pastorate and mission stuff. But it is short little read, fantastic book. I give it to a lot of students who are struggling over a call of vocational ministry, particularly college students. So if you're struggling with that or you're not sure, that's a great resource to look out and grab and read. Again, I'll make sure there's a link for that in the show notes. But I think calling is what keeps you. And there's been a whole lot of days where I've quit and got up the next day and went back to work because, I just knew it was what God called me to. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. There's a lot more we could add to the list, but for brevity's sake, and 7's a perfect number. And so we'll do 7.
I've got some reasons not to leave.
Got some reasons not to leave.
Number 1, you ready?
Yeah, man.
This list is amazing. Like, it's the best list you've ever heard in your entire life. That's what Jimmy Fallon would say. Number 1, you ready? More money.
Yeah. Sometimes that's a reason.
I'm not saying God can't do that. But I'm saying if that's the only reason you're thinking about leaving, it's because you just need more money. It's not a good reason. Because here's the deal.
No, that's a great
reason. You are never going to make a killing doing youth ministry. And I will tell you straight up, even if you become a guy who's speaking at conferences, even if you become a guy who's writing books, you still are not going to make it. Even if you're a guy who's doing podcasts, it is. You are not going to make a killing. There are 48-year-olds, if just from personal experience, all over, that are making a whole lot more money. And I'm blessed. I'm not complaining. I'm thankful for what I have. But I'm just telling you that if that in itself is why you're thinking about leaving, not a good reason. Not a good reason. It needs to be more than that. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't hope for more and that God won't expand your kingdom there and bless you with more. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's wrong to hope for that even, or to even say, hey, you know what? We can't continue to do this as a family if this is all we're making. We're going to have to, if we want to keep doing this, we're going to need to make more money. But I just don't think it could be the only reason. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree. And I know we've kind of, man, I feel like I've plugged your book a ton.
That's a good book.
I'll do it one more time because, man, you have a
1.
chapter on this. It's
Chapter 1.
so good. Dude, if it was the only chapter in the book, it would be a great book.
Chapter 1. I should have put it last, but people may not have gotten to that. So,
so good.
Anyway, well, thank you. You're very kind. Number 2, you ready?
Yeah.
Reasons not to leave. You're tired of working hard. You're just tired of working hard. Like you're just tired of, you're tired of the hard work of youth ministry. I just don't think that's a good reason to leave. It's part of the deal. Here's what I know, man. Almost everybody I know that's successful and kicking butt at their jobs. Now I'm talking about outside of youth ministry. They all have one thing in common. They do their job and they work hard. I'm very preachy sounding. I'm very preachy right now. I get that. And I'm very dad sounding right now. And I get that. But I'm just telling you that being expected to keep 9 to 5 hours at times, there's balance there. Right. I get it. If you're going to be out tonight doing a soccer game, whatever, fine. I'm just telling you, it's hard work. It's part of the deal.
Indeed.
And I am saying, you were about to say, am I saying, what were you going to say? You were going to be smart aleck.
I was going to say, you're saying that I can't start a youth ministry blog and podcast, make a ton of money working from home, living on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, no.
That's not a viable. Okay. I just make sure.
You gotta find a job, Jody, and work hard. Okay. Number 3.
Okay.
Reasons not to leave. You're being held accountable. And that's just from personal experience, having talked to some youth pastors who have a pretty solid streak of rebelliousness in them, that they don't like people telling them what to do.
That's so good.
And they struggle with pastors telling them they've got to wear certain things, or they struggle with people telling them they've got to be on time, or they struggle with people saying, I need you to give me a report on how you're organizing that event, because the last 3 times I've had parents complain and they struggle with the accountability.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's a good reason to leave. I think you need to learn how to be accountable. That's just me. Preachy. Okay, man. Number 4.
No, but hey, look, can I say this?
No, you can't. Okay. I'll let you go ahead.
If your church or your ministry is worth anything, you're going to have some accountability. I would hope. Right? I mean, if people, I mean, maybe not overbearing accountability.
It's part of the deal, bro. Listen, I'm telling you, and I know it's not, if you've listened to us much at all, it's not hard to put together that I'm at a little bit of a bigger church, right? That said, twice a year, I have to sit down for eval, and there's accountability tied to that. There's accountability in everything I do. If the event's terrible, I know it's terrible because people are telling me it's just part of the deal, man.
Yeah.
And I think, and here's what I think, Jody, here's what I think about you. And I think about, I think one of the reasons it makes you good long-term is because you welcome it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course.
You got to believe that you need it. You got to be willing to say, you know what? I need it. I need somebody to hold me accountable. So that's what I think. Okay.
Yep.
Number 4, I've got 3 more. Number 4, you have young kids and it's hard on your family. That in itself. So I do write it. Here's the book again. I do write in the book that one of the most difficult times in youth ministry is those toddler years. And ultimately, maybe that is the ender for you. But I'm going to tell you right now that just because it's hard during those years, that in itself is not a reason to leave, because it's hard on everybody. And I say, here's what I mean by this too. It's not a reason. I'm not talking about leaving youth ministry. I want to be careful to differentiate. I'm talking about leaving your current gig and going to another gig. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, if it's just super hard with your kids right now and it's a really difficult time, don't let that cause you to think, well, maybe if we went to a new church, it'd be better. Nope. It's probably not going to be better. It's still going to be hard because the problem really is the fact that you have toddlers in your house. That's what's hard.
Right.
And that's not going to change until they get older. But I'm going to tell you right now, Jody, and you know this, and you and I love this, right? Because our families have hung out a couple times now. Chewies, what? Listen, it is so worth it, bro, to get through those toddler years. Because those days when your kids are in your youth ministry are awesome. So
it's great.
Good, so good. Look, man, I'm not a fan of I'm really not a fan of babies, truthfully. Can you say that without going to hell? I don't know. But I mean, I'm just not a real big fan of babies, they're just like, but I loved when my kids got older, oh man, so much fun. So,
your kids are like the mascot when they're little,
yeah, it's all right, whatever. I don't like them, but it's just
what happens. They become the, but yeah, I look back now in the moment, man, it was so difficult at times, but looking back,
yep,
like you're saying, man, it was great. It was amazing.
Yep. Number 5, reason not to leave. Your pastor doesn't get you. You don't have enough volunteers. Your budget stinks, and you're not allowed to use the van anymore for youth functions.
That's a lot of number 5.
I decided to put all that together because it all falls into that same kind of category of thinking that grass is greener on the other side, or thinking that I've got a talk that I do called "Living in the Land of If Only." If only I had more budget, if only I had more volunteers, if only. I'm just saying, man, that I think it's just hard everywhere, Yeah. And that in itself is not a reason to leave. So I think that makes sense. I think, good. Yeah. Finally, this is just sort of a bonus here. And honestly, this is a little bit of, this is going to be a little bit, look, I'll be real honest. I score needs improvement when I take a spiritual gift test when it comes to compassion.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked to find that out.
And I've just seen a couple things bouncing around because Pastor Appreciation Day was a couple weeks back or whatever, Yeah. And I saw a couple youth pastors, that didn't get appreciated or whatever, and I'm like, so I wrote down, reason not to leave because you weren't celebrated on Pastor Appreciation Day. I just stop laughing at these poor people, Jody. Gosh, there's somebody listening here and I'm probably hurting your feelings and I don't mean to. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't be nice. I haven't been appreciated on Pastor Appreciation Day in a long, long time. But I guess it's hard in youth ministry because there are moments where it's easy to feel insecure because you're not always invited to the big boy table and you're not always taken seriously. And you do hear these little comments about, oh, well, when are you going to be a big, a real pastor, blah, 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 and all that. And all of that stuff starts to build up over time. And I do understand that it stings a little bit whenever the pastor does get recognized, and maybe you don't, and they don't quite take you as serious or whatever. I just think, though, Jody, that most of the time, it's not being done because these people are trying to be mean to you, but it's done. It's being done out of a lack of understanding of what you do. And so I just don't think there's intentionality behind that. I do think you're appreciated. I just don't think people necessarily understand. It doesn't surprise me that senior adults that make the decisions about senior or Pastor Appreciation Day, that they don't understand what it takes to do youth ministry. That doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise you.
Right.
And so.
Well, and look, I'll say this, having just stepped out, right, of a position we were in for almost 9 years, a place that with people that we love and poured and invested in who know us and love us, right? I mean, not really until we were leaving did so many people say, and we had a lot of people say, I hope you know you're loved and appreciated, and we're sorry we didn't do a better job of showing you that. Yeah. I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear that.
It feels, it's nice. It's nice to hear it, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I mean,
people just suck at telling people how much they appreciate them, especially when we're so busy.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I would say
honestly, most youth pastors suck at telling their volunteers and parents how much they appreciate
this is
them.
where I was about to go. I think the reverse is where we need to be careful and go, well, how good of a job are we doing at that?
Yeah, because there's not like Youth Worker Appreciation Month or day.
Yeah, and so again, I'm not trying,
I hope
man.
not. If there is, and I don't know about it.
Hey, look, we should start that.
Let's start it.
Trying to make volunteer youth worker appreciation day.
Let's do it.
That like sweeps the nation.
Okay. We need a cool hashtag.
Yeah. So anyway, I listen again. I really am not trying to hurt anybody's feelings or pile on. I'm really not trying to do that. I'm just saying that, and I'm not trying to over spiritualize it, but I really do think that it is true that ultimately we can't do this for the recognition. It has to be done because of the calling.
And that's why, and we've talked about this too. Like, that's why you should have a folder in your filing cabinet that is a thank you folder, where every note card that you get goes in there. And when you're struggling and you need to be affirmed, because that happens, you really struggle, open up that.
And it's nice to get a pat on the back.
Oh, it's great. And everybody wants it. We're not saying it's not good to want that.
But when your people don't pass a test, maybe it's not fair that they're being tested, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Just be careful about letting that be the thing like that goes, oh, yeah, nobody loves me.
That's good.
Yeah, anyway.
That's really good.
Well, hey, listen, folks, thanks for listening. And we do care. And we know that, gosh, we've been doing this for a while. We don't know how jaded we sound at times possibly, but we really do love what we do, and we really do want what's best. And I think that shows. I hope that shows. We really do want to see people experience longevity, ultimately, so that youth pastors can do a great job ministering to kids.
Yeah.
And so yeah, man. Keep up the great work if you're listening. Awesome.
Yep. Stay at it. No, I just remind folks to go check out YM360.
YM360. Oh, yeah. Oh, hey, you know what we should plug right now? Related to YM360. And I've done this before. Their devotional, Emmanuel, I think is this year's. They have a Christmas Devo that comes out. I'm not even kidding. It sells out every year. And I'm considering doing it again. I have done it several years, where we just sell these books for we kind of knock the cost off, but it's a 25-day devotion Christmas Advent book. Kids love it, man. It is so good. Just go to YM360, scroll down. I just did. It's like $5.99, and if you get like a certain amount, it can go down as low as $4.99.
Or if you use a promo code, you can save 20%.
Probably should. Yeah, I don't know. Should be able to.
You don't have to.
Yeah, but it's good. That's all I'm saying. It's good. Great idea there. YM360.
Check that out. Also, head over to the show notes page. We've mentioned a bunch of things here. All those will be there
good
for you.
Making the show notes page this time, Jody. It's a lot.
Thanks, bud. You're the best. And make sure you subscribe to the show and check it out. If you are not a part of the Longer Haul, super secret Longer Haul Facebook group, make sure you go over and join that. We've got some giveaways we've got to do on there.
We do. Yeah, we do.
And so we'll be doing those. So there's still time for you to jump into those. There's two big ones coming up.
Hey, you know what we should do? All right, I'm feeling in a good mood here. If anybody's listened up to this point right here, since we talked about the ministry for the youth ministry book what's it called again? Consider This. Yeah. Youth Pastor's Guide to Longevity so much. Let's give one away. I got some around that nobody's buying. So I might as well mail one to somebody. So yeah, we'll do a giveaway. We'll give away one of the books. So
dang. So that's 3. So make sure you head over to the Facebook group and request to join there. Jump in. Good group of folks, man. We like them. We'll keep them around. If you have questions, listen, if you're struggling with this, the group's there for you to reach out. Obviously, you can always reach out to us. we want to help you succeed and do whatever we can to help you thrive and navigate some of those things. And man, if nothing else, just somebody to pray for you.
Jody's got a lot of time on his hands.
No, believe me, I don't. My wife has quickly found things for me to do. So yeah, and I need a job. So if you need somebody to come speak or come, kidding. So I think that's it. We'll catch you in.
Thanks, man.
All right, see you guys in the next episode.
Yep.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.